Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us here today for the Spirit Anchor YouTube video series and the Anchor.fm podcast series. My name is Kristen Schmidt-Dykes, and I'm so excited that you've joined us today. Our guest is Kristi Borst. She is an integrative mind, body, spirit, and emotions healer. She's also the co-creator of the Perspective Reboot quantum healing modality. And she has a doctorate in philosophy and metaphysics and serves as a medical intuitive, life path guide, and spiritual counselor. Hi, Kristi. Thanks so much for joining us here today. We're so excited that you could impart your background and your special skills with our audience. How are you doing?
Thank you, Kristen. Hi, everyone. I'm doing great. Thank you so much.
Thanks. And if you could just tell our listeners a little bit about your background, who you are, what you do, that would be great.
This is really the hardest part for me is to give, labels and titles, because I feel that much of my lifetime I spent in the confines of titles and boundaries and who I was supposed to be and who I needed to be. And I think most of us can fall into that trap. So it really was, in my early 50s that I started trying to break out of some of those boxes. And what I ended up finding was really a greater sense of myself, which is at the core of the work that I do. I think we're all fairly unlimited. So while I resist labels, I'll share that I do have these abilities that allow me to do the work that you kind of introduced.
Gotcha. Well, that's great. Well, it's a pretty broad spectrum of skill sets. And when did you first get involved in these principles and practices?
So for me, the abilities I have, and I think, again, this is true for most of us, we come into this world with gifts, with things that are unique to us, and that's part of why we're here. So some of the emotional healing work that I do, some of the energy clearing that I do, I've done throughout my life, but on a somewhat unconscious level. Mm-hmm. And I did do a physical healing on myself as a child, and I was told to shut that down. Mm-hmm. And that was really part of my path here, to be kind of separated from who I'm here to be. I kind of see it as almost a higher soul challenge to see, will I find my way back to myself? And I think that's, again, true for a lot of us. Sometimes the challenges that we face are really the opportunities hidden in plain view. So kind of as I mentioned, I've had a really, great life. I've been an entrepreneur since I was age 27, self-starter, smart, self-driven, all of those things. But what I started, I guess I'd say, in my 50s was really a shift from the shoulds, the can'ts, and the definition that are all kind of in your head to being more heart-centered. And that's when kind of the magic in my life started happening. So it was around 2012, I joined a program to become a oneness blessing giver. And I had my own childhood healing, or a healing of a childhood trauma, happen through that program. And shortly after that, I started feeling energy in my hands. I started just really feeling like this amazing love flowing through me. I would kind of just sit and, I'd imagine the earth in my hands, and I would just, share that love, just drawn to just heal everything, share the love. So eventually, later that year, I was on a trip with my husband to Sedona, And I had this knowing that it was going to be a spiritual experience. I'm sure many people have that feeling just because of the energy that's there, the energy drawing them to that place. And my spiritual experience happened the first night I was there in, of all places, the beer aisle of the grocery store. I was looking for Starbucks Frappuccinos, which happened to be in that aisle. And as I was walking in the aisle, this man just was staggering toward me. And I heard in my head, talk to him. And so I approached him. It just unfolded. A spirit guided me. I just almost like stepped aside and allowed this healing to flow through me. And at one point, he said to me, "Oh my gosh, this is a spiritual experience." And, the light bulb kind of clicked on for me.
Yeah.
And just struck me, I live in Maine, and here's this place that's, filled with so many beings. And the fact of like me being drawn from like halfway across the country to meet with this person and give him what he needed, him to give me what I needed, it just was magical. And it kind of opened me to another level. And then, other kind of amazing experiences followed. The next day I did have a reading. I had gone there to have a reading. And the intuitive said to me, you're going to start creating miracles, and you're going to go on to teach people this. And he's saying all these things, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute, like, am I going to know what I'm doing before I'm teaching people? Because I just was not even connected into the possibility at that point. And he said, when the time is right, you're just going to know. And it's almost literally what happened.
And I think for a lot of us healers and people that are drawn into metaphysics and these different principles and modalities, sometimes we've kind of always known. You had mentioned earlier that you, at an early age, you started harnessing energy, but like so many of us, it's, don't do that. That's not right. I think our parents are scared, or, the adults in our lives are scared. And it's not until we're a little bit older that we can explore our gifts. And I think, like so many people who have visited and spent any time in Sedona, it's a magical, magical place, and magical things happen. The energy grids, the crystal shops, all the metaphysical stores, and the people that live in that community are vibrating at such a high frequency that for somebody like you, I think that was probably the catalyst to give you the insight, like, listen, this is what you're going to be doing. And I think that when opportunity presents itself and we listen to it, then we can, start off on that path. But also, like you, it's like, how do I start? What do I, who do I talk to? How do I get this going? So I think, I think you are like a lot of people out there that have had similar experiences and kind of not pushed into it, but just, here's the doors open. Now let's see what happens. So
there's also like a chicken and egg situation too, because did it happen because I was there? Sort of, yes, but also because that provided the opening within my own mind to allow me to go there, to allow me to open up. So what I want people to understand is that you don't have to go to Sedona. You have this power within yourself to open the door.
Sure. No, and I agree with you. And I'm just using that as one example because I think spirit presents opportunities in many different forms. And obviously not everybody's able to get to Sedona, but if they can, I always recommend anybody that asks me, should I go to Sedona? I automatically say yes. For whatever reason, even if they're not metaphysical practitioners, just to go and feel that energy. It can be life-changing, but you're right. There's other life-changing things that can happen to us that can kind of spearhead us into this movement. So, and one of those movements is you believe in higher self and self-love. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about this concept and this practice, especially when it comes to learning to let go of how we can, learn to be happy and let go of certain things?
So, again, like there's so many analogies in life, but, the chicken and egg situation, do we not have ease and flow in our life because life is not flowing, or because we're blocking that flow? And we have to get to the point of seeing that it's actually us that's, in a way, creating what we're experiencing, or even collapsing the wave of really abundance and unlimited prosperity and joy. So the higher self, to me, is that non-emotional observer self that watches, where are we looking? What is our focus? What are our beliefs? And if you kind of look at the word beliefs and you take the LIE and you capitalize them, sometimes our beliefs have lies in them. So we have to really be aware. We have to be conscious, creating or living a smaller version of our own happiness, wellness, joy.
So how do our perceptions hold the key to our happiness and what we create in the world? Is there empowerment? Is there change? Can you tell us a little bit about how we go about doing that?
Focusing on the mind versus focusing on the heart. Our minds kind of believe in absolutes. Things are good or things are bad. This is black or this is white. But life isn't really absolute. It's a spectrum. So again, this goes back to the higher self, the observer self. Until we're aware of what we're thinking and what we're focusing on, we can almost feel like we don't have a choice. But that observer self can kind of show us what we're focusing on, because the mind wants to define things. The mind tends to see in absolute values. So something is either good or bad. We're in the flow or we're in the ebb. And in reality, it's not really one thing, it's all things. So the more we can become aware of where we're looking, the more we have a choice of changing our perception, changing where we're looking, expanding our view to see more.
Okay. And is this where you are the co-creator of, is it a platform? Is it a method of helping people navigate that?
I think that most of us are so close to our stories, or our perceptions, our definitions that we've established within our mind are, we're so close to them, we're so enmeshed in them that sometimes we can't even see them. So part of my perspective reboot process, whether it's somebody that's dealing with disease or emotional trauma, or I keep having the same bad things happen to me, part of the process is tapping into where it is that they're actually collapsing the abundance or the wellness or the joy based on these stories that we tell ourselves, right, or these definitions of ourselves that we have. And sometimes those stories are things we've inherited from our family. And I believe that we don't have to continue that story. Sometimes we're here because we're the one that's going to heal that story.
Sure. And what does the healing actually look like? How do you take a client through from having a certain belief system into kind of freeing them into a happier or more whole state of mind?
Okay. So for me and the process that I'm using, I believe that when we were children, we knew exactly who we were here to be.
Mhm.
We knew really that we're connected to Source, that we're connected to our higher self, that we're connected to one another, that we're connected to all of life. So part of the process is going back through almost like a Russian nesting doll kind of version of ourselves, and finding the places where we're not really balanced,
Okay.
where that child self may be stuck in a story, and doing that kind of healing work. So it's usually done in private sessions. Usually the person has something that's manifesting in the physical world, whether it's I've got, a pain in my shoulder that won't go away, doctors can't seem to find a reason for it. And that could be how we tap into that story. So the way it happens, Kristen, is I kind of talk to them on the phone. They give me permission to enter their energy field, and I kind of merge in with them, and kind of insights come to me, messages come to me. Sometimes they even have like a flashback of seeing themselves at a younger age, and that's that younger self kind of presenting and saying, hey, I kind of hold a keystone. Can we explore? So it's very different based on the person, but usually there's a cornerstone that will appear for that person.
That's great.
Like the light bulb.
Sure. And so for your clients, you work remotely, you're up in Maine. So when you're talking to people, are you doing a video session, or is it on the phone, or how are you communicating with them during the session?
Typically it's over the phone. I do offer an option add-on if people want to have the webcam to kind of see, but a lot of times we have our eyes closed and we're, kind of focusing on what's happening in the body, mind, spirit. So it's not necessary to have the webcam, but again, for people that want that, it's available. I do also see people here in Wells in my home. Well, not at the moment with
right.
physical distancing.
Important point to make for people who think that they need to, if they're going to schedule a healing session, that they need to be vis-a-vis with the healer. And I thought you brought up a good point that as long as you can tap into, that their higher self has allowed you to come into and perform the healing, then it doesn't matter if you're in front of them or if you're, halfway around the world, which I think is really important for people to grasp, because so many people that I've spoken with said, well, do you know anybody in this town? And I'm like, oh, listen, you can call somebody that, I can recommend you to somebody, and you don't even need to be there. And it's amazing that the healing takes place no matter where you are, as long as the intent is there. Kristi, you're a medical intuitive as well. Can you explain to us a little bit about how you first realized that you had that talent and how it manifested itself?
Let's see. How did I first? I think you might want to edit here.
Yeah, I will. Don't worry about it. It's okay.
Okay. So I think that this is something that came through as I started doing sessions with people. For example, sometimes the ouchie or the dis-ease that's in our body is, I think that this is something that came through as I started doing sessions with people. For example, sometimes the ouchie or the dis-ease that's in our body is actually the result of unease or discomfort in the mind or the emotions. So the medical intuitive aspect that I'm able to bring to somebody in the session is to understand what thought or belief or emotion or trauma may be blocking the the body's natural ability to heal itself. So, for example, in that kind of example I gave earlier, where someone's got a problem in their shoulder, one of the first clients I had was in that situation where he was having pain in his shoulder, and doctors said, "You're going to have surgery." He knew I was doing this work. He said, "What do I got to lose?" And when I touched that shoulder, I heard Father. So I said to him, "Okay, tell me about your relationship with your father." And it ended up that he had so much like repressed anger that he hadn't been able to express in that relationship, that was literally kind of stuffed into that part of his body.
Right.
And as we worked to release that, he was pain-free after that, after that situation. So the medical intuitive part is helping the person understand what signals they might be unconsciously sending to their body, or what emotion is actually at the root of the disease that is presenting in the physical.
And I've been a firm believer of that we manifest certain ailments or maladies in our body. I remember for a very long time, I was carrying all of my fear around money in my lower back. So anytime that my lower back would go out, it finally sunk in. All right, I'm struggling with my finances, or there's fear around my finances. And once I lifted that fear, I will tell you, I have not had lower back pain in almost 20 years. That wraps up our time with Kristi Borst. Thank you so much for joining us here today. If you'd like to schedule a session with Kristi, you can visit www.distantenergy.com, and we'll also have all of her contact information at the end of this presentation. But before we leave you, Kristi is going to do an affirmation for us. Kristi, thanks so much for joining us, and thank you for providing us with this wonderful affirmation.
You're welcome. Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join me today. Perhaps it's human nature to blame others when things go awry. Why is this happening to me? When is it my turn? How can we create a better life, heal our illness, be happy? The breath that breathes us connects and empowers us. We are co-creators. Things are not happening to us. They are happening for us or even through us. Watch your vibe. This is where we can change everything. Question what you think and where you're looking. Become aware of how you may be collapsing your own abundance, light, and love. It's win-win as we choose to live in and create from the emotional space of trust, love, goodness, compassion, forgiveness. Awareness equals the power of choice, equals the power to change. When we change the way we see the world and be within the world changes. Inhale life, breathe out love, release what no longer serves you.
Thank you, Kristi. This has been wonderful. We appreciate your time. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.